Good start. Right, now, hopefully we've got sound, which we didn't have a moment ago, and what we need is Philip Meredith. At the stage, there's Philip Meredith. I can hear somebody rustling something, so somebody's got sound somewhere. Let's hope that everything is going as it should. Can you hear us, Philip? No, you can't.
Yes.
Right, you can. Good. Well, the gang's all here, and I expect two of you being conniving over the weekend to surprise me. So off you go.
Well, we were going to do Romanian Airlines again, and then we thought we'd save that for you as a Christmas.
Oh yes, absolutely. Don't get me excited at this stage of the year.
No, exactly. But oddly enough, the word for today, to coin the, was it Sesame Street? They had a letter for the day, didn't they? The word for today is serendipity. Because both Philip and I came up with the same subject. And Philip, perhaps you could explain what that subject is.
Well, if you have kept to the script, I believe is memorable moments. It's memorable sporting good bad.
Yeah. So it's moments that we witnessed either live or on television or on radio. Nothing that we've watched on playback, but in some sense were there in the moment when they happened. And the reason for doing that is there are lots of sporting things happening at the moment. There's the 50-over World Cup cricket, which I think we should just pass over and leave to one side after yesterday. There's the Rugby World Cup, and there are some significant games occurring in football, not least of which is that Scotland, and they deserve a little shout out here, last night qualified for the finals when they hadn't even played, because Spain won, and so therefore Scotland definitely go through. Of course, they will crash and burn when they get to the finals, because that's what the Scottish team always do. But I was very pleased for them that they, and also their manager, that they managed to do that. But I don't think it's going to go anywhere. So, Philip, I'm going to invite you to start us off with your memorable moments of sporting achievements.
I'm going to begin, since it will be rather ironic, which is the one thing I can't claim to experience was alive when in 1966 I was 7 years of age, 9 years of age. I think we did have a television, but there was actually watched it. So that's a rather bad start. You say
Philip, I have to say to you,
you
Philip, that,
tend to watch, not on the radio. So
yes, Philip, if you listen to me for a second, could you invite Mrs. Meredith to buy you a new update for your internet link? Because you are very Norman Collier today. Again. And what you're saying is interesting.
well, I have got there were problems immediately this morning. I told you the strongest signal available in this area. And I've got the, it was listen to me being Norman Collier, or listen to me.
It's one word in three at the moment, Philip, I have to tell you. I don't mean that in a bad way about you personally. I'm just saying it really isn't quality.
We've lost him.
Right, he's probably gone off in a grump.
Okay. Well, can I tell you my two while we're waiting for him to come back?
I was going to say the first one I was going to tell you about is one that this little fellow who's sitting behind me here.
And that's Jed.
That's Jed.
You can't see him, but Jed's there, yes.
Yeah.
And he responded to his name, yeah. God bless you. Yeah.
He,
There he is. A little kiss. I got a little kiss.
Okay,
Oh, that's lovely. That's lovely. Yes,
his favourite sporting
he's such
event
a beautiful, beautiful dog. Yeah.
Relates, of course, to your viewership, because he loves watching replays of One Man and His Dog on the television. Albeit, the only reason I have him, and I may have told you this already, Keith, is that he was born on a farm. You know, but he was the slight runt of the brood, and he's a bit wary of sheep. He doesn't, you know, he was never going to make a sheepdog. Anyway, tell us your two.
I've got two joint ones. One is the Matthews final, which I'm old enough to have watched.
That's quite something to watch. Yeah.
And the other is the Johnny Wilkinson's drop goal in the World
2003.
Cup. And can I just tell you where I was?
Tell us where you were.
I was in the Cookery Bar, which was the expats bar in Pristina in Kosovo, surrounded by half the diplomatic community of the British Embassy and a whole host of soldiers and and I've never been in such a frenetic that when he dropped that goal, and we realised we'd won. But the Cookery Bar was named after the dagger.
Oh, right. Yeah,
The Kukuri, and run by two very, very affable Brits, and it was a wonderful place to be.
I remember that. So this is the 2003 Rugby Union World Cup final, just for those who might not know, which is where England won. And as Keith says, it was a drop goal from the halfback that won it for us. Very, very late in the game. And I have to confess that I went to the Elephant and Castle, which, as those of you who live in Lewes will know, is a pub, and I think it still is quite a pub that showed a lot of sport. And they opened early in the morning, and they were doing breakfasts and also drink, of course. And I'd arranged, because of the time difference, it was all played in the morning. Over here, it was played very early in the morning. And I arranged to meet my young family down on Cliff High Street. And I was absolutely peed as in anything when I got down there, because I drank far too much Guinness. But they didn't seem to mind for once.
Right, we have Phil back with us.
Good.
I'm actually using my mobile phone.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Phil, Keith's just been talking about the 2003 Rugby Union World Cup final. And, Keith was in an interesting place. I was in Lewes, inevitably. Wondering, did you watch that?
If you mean beating Australia,
Yep.
in Australia by Rob Andrews, was it Rob Andrew or Johnny Wilkinson's drop goal?
Johnny Wilkinson.
It was a magnificent experience. I remember the look on the Australian Prime Minister's face as he gave the trophy to the big man, Martin Johnson. And then what I really loved was that the Royal Mail issued a special edition of stamps purely for Australia and New Zealand with a picture of Martin Johnson holding the trophy.
and did you watch that from home, Phil? Or
yes, I was here, not in
Right.
this room, but I was in our living room where the television was. And
I
I can't remember if I watched it with anybody. I think I did.
I was just saying to Keith that I was in the Elephant and Castle.
Oh, yeah.
In Lewes, because it was early in the morning, getting absolutely drunk as a skunk. And Keith, tell Phil where you were, because that's quite impressive.
I was in Pristina, and I was in a bar called the Cookery Bar. The Cookery being the dagger, that's what it was named after. And I was with half the diplomatic community of several countries actually, plus a whole host of soldiers. And it was the favourite bar, right dead centre in Pristina, that for the expats, and it was absolute mayhem. I've never been in anything quite like it.
And Keith,
I rather envy you that. I rather envy you that. That sounds fun. So,
Keith,
were you in Kosovo?
Yes.
Yeah.
Keith,
Sorry, I always assume that people know that Pristina is in Kosovo, but they don't,
No,
it's such a small country, landlocked. And,
yeah. Now, the other thing you did say, only in passing, and you've not given us details of this, because you said you had two sporting memories.
Yes.
One of which was that 2003 final. The other of which was the Matthews football final.
final.
And there may be, I'm sure there are viewers in particular the one man and his dog, who don't know what you mean by that. Explain
Right.
what you mean by that.
Well, I think it was Blackpool versus. You remind me who they were against in the cup final of 1953.
It was 53.
Yes.
It wasn't Bolton, was it?
No. If somebody said I would remember it, but anyway, Stanley Matthews, in my book, is the greatest footballer of all time. And I've actually watched Pele play in a slightly different place in Empire Stadium in Vancouver. He's on a touring side, and
that must have been towards the end of his career.
yes,
Yeah.
It would have been 1960, 59 or 60. Yeah. But sorry. Oh yes, the Matthews final is Blackpool were something like 3-1 down at half time, and Matthews came on in the second half. Well, he was on. They didn't have substitutes in those days. I mean, he'd been playing all the time, but they got him on the wing, and he went down the wing and popped the ball over, and in it went. He went down the wing, popped the ball over, in it went. He went down the wing, popped it over, and it went. And Blackpool won 3-1, 3-2, I think it was, or 4-3 possibly. But and it was the most remarkable display of football that I think I ever will see. I never met Stanley Matthews as such, but I did actually interview him on the phone on one occasion. He's one of my all-time great footballers.
Keith is great for name dropping.
Yeah,
There we go.
Yes, he's very much like that, isn't he?
I'm sorry, chaps. I'll
Yeah,
try to
I
keep
think-
quiet.
I think
if only
I
their
think you'll
names
find
dropped.
that Blackpool won 3-2.
3-2, was it? Yes.
Yeah.
Phil, you were about to tell us about one of yours, and when you were breaking up a little bit. Tell us about it.
Was I? No, I think I was bemoaning the fact that I missed the 1966 final World Cup. I was going to move on to the very thing you mentioned, the Australia, the win against Australia. Other things in rugby, Llanelli beating the All Blacks.
Yes.
That amazing Barbarian win against the All Blacks with at least one amazing try from the Welsh centres.
Which included a forward pass, of course.
Yes, indeed it did. It wouldn't have counted today, would it?
No.
Football-wise, although I don't follow international football very much these days now, but beating Germany 5-1 in Munich, which I watched live, those were the days. And the disappointment of the game against Argentina, in which dear old Beckham got sent off. But prior to that wonderful Michael Owen goal. Disappointments. Again, rugby. Losing the last World Cup final to our opponents this coming Saturday after the heights of beating New Zealand in the semis. And of course, being mugged by your lot back in 1991, was it? Or 90? When you somehow managed to get the Grand Slam.
Yes.
By mugging us at Murrayfield.
It was 91, I think.
Yeah, I think it was 91. Well, you're right to remember.
You mean Scottish?
Yeah, you're right to remember that. as a Scot because you haven't done much else. You haven't done much else since, really.
Well, I think if England had been in the group of death as Scotland were in the current competition, England wouldn't have got through either.
No, I wasn't being particularly serious. They wouldn't have got through. I'm amazed they are where they are, but the thought of them overcoming South Africa, they're just not going to do it.
No.
They're just simply not going to do it. And although I do like the Pumas, I think I've shared with you before my regret that there was a chance that the Pumas would become the 7th nation in Europe. But for some reason, one of the rugby football unions blocked it, which is a terrible shame.
When you see the Argentinian Pumas becoming part of Europe, I bought you that atlas last Christmas. I think you should look at it. I think you should look at it, Phil.
Yeah, I'm talking about the rugby team. Am I not? I know that Argentina is in South America.
Jolly good. And what language do they speak?
They speak Spanish.
Exactly.
But so does Spain.
Well, yeah, not all Spanish people speak Spanish.
Catalan.
There's Catalan, there's Galician, which is the top northwest. And there are various other little enclaves of different languages that some of which are sort of hybrids. It's a bit like the British Isles, where you've got Welsh, Scots, Gaelic, Cornish, and things like that. But in fact, they're probably stronger in terms of keeping those open. And I think part of that is because Franco suppressed all those languages. And when I was younger, I was in Barcelona, as you are sometimes. And I went to a little sort of, it was a market, like a car boot sale, effectively. And there was I bought very cheaply a Castilian Spanish Catalan dictionary from the 19th century. And had that been found, whoever had it during Franco's lengthy era, it would have been destroyed. So I bought it because I quite like it.
But I suspect that anybody in Spain, whatever dialect they speak, and anybody in Argentina, they would understand somebody saying "mi gusto cojones," wouldn't they?
They would understand that, but Catalan's a very different language. I'm quite keen on those things. Anyway,
why is Catalan a different language?
Because
presumably it's history of the
because Spain wasn't in the same way that Italy wasn't a single entity for most of its existence, and then got united, and Catalan or Catalonia, as in George Orwell homage to Catalonia, was very anti-Franco, and that's why Orwell went out there to fight for the Catalans, ultimately unsuccessfully, obviously. But it's the Galicians in particular are an interesting little enclave because they're tucked away north of Portugal. They've got a beautiful country, beautiful, because it's not hot and sort of deserty. It's very verdant, and it's on the Atlantic coast. They've got a lot of their own particular culture and that sort of thing. And if you ever get the chance to go there, I would strongly recommend it. It really is quite a special place. Anyway, back to where we were. Which is great sporting memories. Now, obviously, I've got things like 1980, West Ham beating Arsenal in the FA Cup final, but I'm not going to dwell on that because you don't need to hear that. But one that I'd like to hear both of your accounts on is Headingley, 1981, the Ashes, England chances of winning, deemed by the bookmakers who don't give money away at 500 to 1. And then both of them knocked the Aussies all around. And dear old Bob Willis produced the bowling performance of his life. I wonder where you were when that happened.
Me?
Yeah.
In front of a television screen watching it. Again, the good old days. Richie Benno commentator. Of course, Botham's magnificent innings was not the only one that series.
No.
But he was helped hugely by Graham Dilley,
who sadly has also gone at too young age.
Yes. And then, as you say, I mean, the backstory appears to be, and this is from Brearley himself, he knew because he was such a psychologist. I think that was his qualification out of
Psychotherapist.
Yeah. And he said in hindsight that, ex post facto, he said that I knew that if I kept Bob not bowling, he would be so angry that something would happen, and boy, did it happen. And then the sight of, I think it was Yallop's middle stump cartwheeling out of the ground on the last ball, and Willis, whose nickname was Goose because of his run-up, legging it to the old Headingley Pavilion and never came out again. Everybody was chanting his name. And of course, the 500 to 1, and of course, this wouldn't be allowed these days. Typically, Marsh and Lilly, they put £10 on each.
So that's Marsh, the Australian wicketkeeper,
Rodney Marsh, keeper, and Dennis Lilly, their premier fast bowler.
Yeah,
both real characters, of course. So they put, I think, a tenner each on, well, they were quids in. Not that either of them did anything wrong to enhance or allow the defeat. Far from it. But of course, another thing I remember about Brearley and Lilly. Do you remember the time when Lilly walked out with an aluminium bat?
Yes, and it was knocking the ball out of shape.
And it also made a terrible noise.
Yes.
And he'd done it to wind Brearley up.
Well, I think he also had some sort of marketing deal, didn't he, with the people who were producing it?
Well, he may have done, but because I remember the heated debate, should we call it, that he and Brearley were having out in the middle about this bat. And the umpires hadn't a clue what to do because they didn't know whether it was actually illegal or not.
Yeah.
because its measurements were identical to a standard bat. And I don't think the regulations then, if now, say it has to be made out of wood.
No, but I don't think it could be a bat that manifestly damages the ball in the way that it was doing.
No. So that was 1981. Of course, Botham scored an amazing, it's hardly ever mentioned, but he scored an extraordinary century at Old Trafford, that series.
Yes.
Something like 138, was just short of 150. I remember Benno's comment because he hooked Lilly, which takes some doing, and Botham never wore a helmet. This was before helmets anyway. And he hooked Lilly for 2 sixes in 1 over. And I remember Benno saying, it's a bit like swatting a fly.
Keith, where were you? Do you remember that?
Yes, I was in Northern Ireland, and I didn't actually watch the match, but I hate to be a name dropper again, but that team came over to Northern Ireland to play a match against an Ulster team, not an Irish team, an Ulster team. And because I was doing a little bit of work on the side for British Airways, I was invited along to the match and the shindig. So I'm terribly sorry, but I met the team.
There we go. Well, I on that day, I was.
You just talk about the right things. That's all.
I was at school, and we were having our swimming gala. Would you believe?
I would believe it.
And about halfway through, the 2 games teachers who were running it said, right, we're going to postpone this now. We're all going to go and watch the telly.
Brilliant. Now that's the sort of school mastering I like.
Yes. Yeah. They were very kind about that. Well, I think mainly because they wanted to watch it.
Of course. That's the genesis of all of that. They wanted to watch it.
Yeah. And just dealing with the Bob Willis point, my recollection may be wrong, but I've got a biography of his that I've read. And I think the reason he went off and didn't come back out is, and this is back in 81, different times, he had to go and play for his county the next day. So he had to get back home.
Which is Warwickshire, was it not?
Yeah. And sort everything out and then head off to play for his county. You know, it's just extraordinary. You know, you think about it nowadays, it simply wouldn't happen that way, would it?
It wouldn't, and it couldn't, because they're all contracted in a very exclusive way.
Yeah.
So, yeah, he had to go back for Warwickshire. Warwickshire play where?
Edgbaston.
2005. What happened at Edgbaston?
I don't know. There's something going.
England beat Australia in a critical Ashes series, and they beat Australia at Edgbaston, and that was the match that turned the series, and we regained the Ashes for the first time in God knows how long. But it was such a close game; it was absolutely nail-biting. And it ended with their number 11 on almost the last ball of the day, nicking the ball down the leg side. And the English keeper threw himself like a flipping goalkeeper and caught it one-handed. and that's how we bowled them out. But boy, was it close. And then, from recollection, we drew at Old Trafford, and then it was rained off at the Oval. Is my recollection, Richard?
Yes, I seem to remember Flintoff was involved in that in some way, but I may be wrong.
Well, the thing at Old Trafford, which again was an extraordinary game, they targeted Ricky Ponting.
Yeah.
I mean, it's probably, in my opinion, the best fast bowling lineup as a quartet that England have ever had. They were simply irrepressible. There was Flintoff, there was Harmison, there was Hoggard, and there was Jones from Glamorgan. And they were relentless. And there's one over that Flintoff bowled, and it's still known as the Ponting over. Because, I've still got the DVDs of that series, and I sometimes still watch this particular thing because I've never seen an opposition skipper so phased and so dismissed in one over ever. It was just extraordinary. But I remember the Edgbaston as well. Yeah.
I'm going to move on, if I may.
Please do.
A sporting memory that I have. Completely different sport.
Oh, before we leave cricket, could I just, because I know that you set quizzes for your extended family. Here is a question.
Go on then.
Which ground did Donald Bradman describe as not the best, but the most beautiful that he ever played on?
Arundel.
No. I mean, it's a pretty difficult one. I don't expect you to have it, but I thought before I forget it.
It's in this country.
No.
Right. Okay.
I don't think you'd ever get it, but I think you should tuck it away for.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is Brockton Oval in Vancouver. And Brockton Oval sits on a little peninsula jutting out into the Vancouver Harbour. And there are the Cascade Mountains, actually, that come down at the start of the Rockies.
Yeah.
And it's in a 1,000-acre park, natural park. And he said this is the most beautiful ground I have ever played cricket on. So there you are. Sorry to interrupt this. But...
Not at all. Not at all. I was going to move on and just say one of my memorable sporting moments is in a completely different sport, which is darts. And it goes back to the time when darts was on the telly and Sid Waddell.
The hockey?
Well, he did the commentary.
Yeah, I know, yeah.
And Eric Bristow had just won the World Championship yet again. And Waddell, who was just a beautiful wordsmith, said, when Alexander the Great was 33, he wept salt tears because he'd conquered all the world and there was nothing else to conquer. Eric Bristow is 28. It's just brilliant. you know how many ordinary darts fans would know what the hell he was talking about? I don't know, but it was a beautiful way of summing up what Bristow by then had done. And I remember it very well and thinking, good grief, that man knows, he clearly pre-prepared it. There was no question about it. But it was a very memorable. You can get it on YouTube, and it's worth a rewatch, that one, I have to say. Right, what's your next one then, Phil?
Well, you having, as it were, gone off-piste.
Yeah, completely.
You and I were together in the Brewers Arms when Liam, now the boss there with his sister Kathy, described to us the mayhem that modern darts creates up at Alexandra Palace.
Oh, yes.
And the dart seems almost a sideshow, because it's just a load of absolute drunks. and they have fights. Sounds dreadful. But there we are. I mean, again, going off piece, I think I used to watch Pot Black.
Yes.
I rather liked it. But I remember when an Irishman, whose name I've now forgotten, but you'll remind me, with the Dennis Taylor. Dennis Taylor beat against all the odds Steve Davis.
On the black, on the last frame.
Correct. And he'd been written off completely. And Steve Davis, who was a bit of an Eric Bristow, but in a very dull way, he had a face like a slapped buttock. He couldn't believe it himself. He couldn't even bring himself to really congratulate Taylor. I remember that. Not a great moment, but a memorable moment.
No, a very memorable moment, because I was allowed to stay up and watch that, even though I was quite young. And Steve Davis failed to cut the black. He had it was a slightly tight cut, but it just didn't, nobody expected him to miss it. And he left it for Taylor with a very easy pot. And you may remember that Taylor then went up and kissed the cup before he took the shot, because he just knew that he'd won it.
I didn't remember. I didn't recall that bit. I remember him pointing his finger at the press people.
Oh yeah, he did that. Yeah, and he had upside down glasses. Yeah. And the odd thing about it is that they, in a way, they clearly become friends, because they both do commentary on snooker now. But Steve Davis, who on Spitting Image used to be called Steve Interesting Davis,
correct,
has in fact found a hinterland. He does DJing and things like that, and he's very informative when he does his commentary on the snooker. So he has found somewhere a personality which, when he was playing, and it maybe he just closed it all in, I don't know, he just didn't seem to have at all.
He didn't have one, no. As you say, as Spitting Image portrayed. Now, there's a chap called Ben Stokes.
Now, ginger people who are dull. I'm just thinking about this, Phil. Yeah, I've got some. Yeah, go ahead. Ben Stokes. Tell us about Ben Stokes.
He won a match for England against Australia. I was going to say single-handedly. He scored the most amazing century plus with all sorts of ramp shots, reverse sweeps, you name it. But who was the real hero that day?
Go on, tell us.
Well, it was described as the best one not out we've ever seen.
Oh, right, of course. The chap with the glasses, the bowler.
The Somerset spin bowler.
Yeah, I can't think of his name.
Ridiculously, nor can I. But he was the real hero.
Yeah, because he just stuck in there for a long period of time, didn't he?
Oh, I mean, yeah, Leach. That's his name. Leach.
Yeah.
Jack Leach.
The other thing about Ben Stokes, which was, I thought, enormously impressive, is that when England had that last over, and then it went to what they call a super over, there was an extra 6 balls each. And the only reason they got there is because he was running for a single, and the ball hit him and went for 4. And if a batsman deliberately does that, then it doesn't count. It's a dead ball. But it clearly was completely inadvertent on his part. He was sort of sliding in, and they'd thrown the ball and off it went. And he, at that stage, was saying, I don't want those runs. It's not fair. And the umpire said, well, it is actually. You get them, and there's no, that's the way it is. But I thought that was incredibly sportsmanlike on his part. Considering where he came from, the awful fracas in the car park of a Bath nightclub. He has turned into, one of the great British sporting heroes of the current age, no question.
Yes, well, that example of his sportsmanship is in stark contrast to what I felt was the lowest an Australian has ever plumbed to when Bairstow was run out when the ball had been dead.
Yes.
By the Australian wicketkeeper, because he wasn't back in his ground, thinking the ball and the over was over. The umpires had no choice, and the Australian captain, who apparently has just been given an award for something but doesn't deserve it, took the wicket. He could have overruled the appeal, but he didn't. I thought that was pretty low.
May I just mention one other memorable sporting moment for me? Keith's spoken about all the famous people he's met, from God down. Interviewed them all. The Michael Parkinson Mirador television. Yeah. A memorable sporting event for me was when my 4-person team won the Toad in the Hole Championship, World Championship, in the town hall here in Lewes a few years ago.
Very impressive.
Yeah, because
it's not an easy game, Toad.
You can imagine the World Championships are very, very competitive. They have 48 teams who turn up there, and then you play, different sort of round robins and then knockout and all that sort of thing. And we found our form. In fact, Pete Nemeet was on the team with another couple. And the downside of it is that, in fact, I'm such an obstreperous old bugger that a couple of years later I was arguing with the committee that ran the local league, and they banned me. And I'm the only person who's ever been banned from the Toad in the Hole League. So I gave it up. And that's true. So
No, I remember you telling me about that.
yeah, how do you get banned from Toad in the Hole? But there we go.
You must have tried very hard.
I was expressing strong views, I think it's fair to say. I wasn't using bad language.
Yeah.
But they just decided that I was too much for them, which is fair enough.
Well, last season, football-wise, you both know that I am a lifelong Manchester City fan, and have lived in the shadow of Manchester United, so-called, for many, many decades. But last season was simply amazing. Premier League won with Arsenal breathing down our necks. The joy of beating United in the first ever All-Manchester Cup final. Watching our captain shake hands with Alex Ferguson up in the balcony, who again had a face like a slapped buttock. And then winning the Champions League. In other words, a treble. You can't get much better than that.
No, I know, Phil, that you were always in despair that City would never get the European Cup.
I never thought it would happen. We just never seemed to just do it. But we did. For the first time ever this season, I'm really rather relaxed about the whole thing. As long as United continue to fail, and now the Glazers look to be there for another 10 years at least, they will continue to fail. Life is good.
I just wanted to open this up a little bit, Phil, because I'm aware that there's part of you that considers Manchester United's failures more important than Manchester City's successes.
Oh, wholly, yes. It's not just part of me. It's probably 50-50 minimum.
I just wanted to ask you why you think that sport brings out such passions in people. We've been talking about things that we feel passionate about. Why do you think sport does that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a tribal thing. Football, without doubt, is a tribal game. And if, like I used to, I'm just a fat armchair fan these days, but if, like I used to, for a long, long time, actually go and watch, in my case, Manchester City, and also see them suffer as they did, dropping down to the third tier in the shadow of Stretford, as I call them, you feel it. And if you've, again, in my example, as you've asked me, if you've suffered the slings and arrows of arrogant Manchester United fans for as long as I have, then
you take it very personally. And
I think it's fair to say, Phil, that you take most things very personally. But anyway, there we go.
yes, in particular you. But
there is that sort of interesting feature of it that you're there and you're talking about two teams from Manchester, and so even down here, for example, Brighton, who play out of Falmer, their big rivals are Crystal Palace, who are effectively the local team to them. And you can look at lots of sports where that tribalism it entails people who are in some way close, either geographically or historically. That's where the real animosity is. Do you have any sports that you follow, Keith, nowadays?
Yes, I mean, apart from rugby, I follow Aston Villa.
Oh, gosh,
and
right.
well, I mean, the happy thing from Phil's point of view is that we supplied them with Jack Grealish.
Yes, that's true.
Which is very helpful to their cause.
Yeah. Do you have any particular geographical reason for that? Or
yes, in fact, I have a very good reason. I'm awfully sorry. It just sounds that I was rich and famous, and I wasn't at all. I just had a long, big family. But the Moore family, who founded HP Source,
yeah,
ancestors of mine,
and right.
They, not the HP Source people, but a printer who was related to them. He actually bought a debenture in the plot of land which is now Villa Park. So my family, I mean, my brother has season tickets for them, and brought his children season tickets and so on and so forth. So there is a family relationship there.
So saucy Keith in more ways than one, dear viewers. It is odd how people end up with those loyalties, though, isn't it?
Isn't it? Yeah. I mean, they are those sort of things. I mean, I suppose I've been to Villa Park about 10 times in my entire life. But I mean, it gets so silly that at one time I would wake up on a Sunday morning not daring to look at the newspapers in case I had lost.
Yes, I know that feeling also well. But you like the rugby as well?
Oh, I mean, I went to a rugby school. I played rugby.
What position did you play?
Well, at the school, I was 3/4 because I was quite small and light. But at university, I was then changed to number 8 when you didn't have to be a giant in those days.
No, I know.
And actually, I noticed that in the recent series that there are a couple of number 8s that aren't giants, but international caliber.
And there are scrum halves who are just about my height. Who Dupont is 5'9", and that's a good sign, because otherwise it just turns into American football.
Yes.
Just let's just have the biggest people we can have.
What's he saying?
Trundling around.
Wi-Fi is fast. Sorry.
Yeah.
Well, right. It was the Wi-Fi that went, and that's why Phil left us so abruptly. So I think that we will forgive him, because, as I often say on this program, is the technical side of things can be very difficult, and we have no control over it whatsoever. Can I just? I think I've told you this story before, but I'm thinking of writing to Rugby World to make a recommendation for the English team. I noticed the other night that Ireland, in response to the haka, did
An
an
eight.
8. Yeah. Now, coming up at 10 o'clock this morning is our correspondent in France, Harry Atherton. And he and I formed a rugby team in Vancouver in 1966, I think it was, called the Scribes, because it was made up of journalists. We thought it would be going for about 2 seasons at most, and we would get fit. It's now got ladies' teams, its own clubhouse, and so on, and it's become very, very big. But we had a Pixish English producer at the BBC, and in Canada they were very, very aggressive because they were ex-football players playing rugby, and they went "Wah!" at the start of the game, and so on. And he said, "Tell you what, why don't we do Ring Around the Roses?" Which we did. And to this day, they still do Ring Around the Roses, 50 years on, 60 years on. And a referee at one point, apparently, at the 7th game, said that you're not going to do it. They said, all right, we won't play. But it occurred to me that when they were doing the haka the other night, the Fijians, is I'm going to write to RFU, and I'm going to say, why didn't the English team do Ring Around the Roses? I don't think you'll get anywhere.
Yeah,
but I tell you, it is absolute fun, particularly when you get it all fall down. I thought I told that story, but
Keith's been on the meths again.
But I see that some people are beginning to object to the haka.
Yes.
Sort of saying it's stale, and I like these traditions, frankly.
Yes, there's no harm in them.
No, and actually rugby is full of tradition.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the interesting things about American football is that in the 1800s, when the rugby was just getting going, is the Montreal University. It isn't called Montreal; it's called something else. I forget what it is now. But they went down to Harvard, and they played half a match, the Harvard rules, and half a match, rugby union rules. And the Harvard people got together and said they didn't particularly care for the rugby union rules. So they went with the Harvard rules, which has now become American football. And Montreal said they didn't care for the Harvard game, so they played rugby union rules. And now rugby union is fairly established in Canada. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Well, also, Canadians have a default position of wanting to distance themselves from anything American, don't they?
Oh, yes, that's right.
Worst insult you could give to a Canadian is to say, which part of America do you come from?
Yeah. Yes, it's their big neighbour, big neighbour to the south. But rugby is catching on, and we were talking the other day about substitutes.
Yes,
and there is a match played between the top rugby university on the West Coast and in Canada, and the top rugby team in California, and they play for the World Cup, believe it or not. Now everybody thinks, oh, how pretentious, but it wasn't. It was a cup that was offered way back in 1900 or something of the sort by a newspaper called the Vancouver World, and that's why it's called the World Cup. But the big laugh was, I mean, we had several international who ended up in Vancouver who would get involved in, not least of which is Graham Butch, the Scottish player.
All right.
Yes. But they would secretly laugh because the proponent of rugby in California was a guy called Doc Hudson. And Doc Hudson sort of, before we were allowed substitutes, tweaked the rules. So they said whenever they came up, the team that they played in the first half was not at all the same team they played in the second half. He just substituted everybody. It's lots of fun. You've got to get over there. Oh, indeed you have.
Might I leave my little dog with you?
I'm delighted, and everybody. Jed is going to stay here with me and help me through the morning, which is not going to be easy. We've got a lot going on. Thank you, Richard, for your program.
Thank you.
It's interesting stuff as usual. Yeah, it's all right.
I'll be back.
Jed, yeah, you stay with me, all right? Yes, he'll be back. Don't worry. Okay, there we have Jed back with us, and so I'm not alone. Let's see if we got any messages. We haven't. So what we will do is we will take a little break, and then we will come back, and we'll on a Monday and a Friday we're swapping the times so that the boys can go and prosecute or defend as their want may be, and we're going to have a news at 9 o'clock or thereabouts prior to going to France and Harry Atherton. But I'll take a brief break before I come back, and perhaps I can mention another change that we're going to make for a variety of reasons. We are going to have a pretty full day on Monday. We're going to have a pretty good full day on Wednesday, a pretty full day on Friday, and then we're going to replay today on Tuesday, replay Wednesday on Thursday, and replay Friday on Saturday. So although you'll get the same fare, you'll have an opportunity to not necessarily have to force to watch it when we say you should watch it. There will be an opportunity for you to follow it. But this is a natural evolution of what's happening at Mirador. We're getting bigger. We're getting more serious. We're getting better. I think, but it does require forced changes. So we'll just say toodle-pip for a little while, and we'll be back shortly. So where are we? There we go.